When the black waitress stepped in to save a dying man's life, she never could have imagined that one act of kindness would cost her job and change her life forever. A man collapses in the middle of a fast food joint, and instead of being hailed as a hero for saving his life, the person who helps him gets fired on the spot. Sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly what happened to Tasha, a hard-working black waitress just trying to make ends meet. Before we dive into the story, do me a favor, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment, letting me know where you're tuning in from. Trust me, it only takes a second, and it really helps support the channel so I can keep bringing you more amazing stories like this. It all started on a busy Tuesday afternoon at Greg's Burger Barn, where Tasha had been working double shifts to keep food on the table for her 5-year-old daughter. The place was packed with customers scarfing down greasy fries and oversized milkshakes, when Jake, a white guy wearing gym shorts and a sweat-drenched tank top, stumbled into the store. At first glance, he looked like your average jogger stopping by for a quick snack. But then, bam, he dropped like a sack of potatoes right next to the soda machine. Tasha didn't hesitate. She bolted from behind the counter, shouting, "Call 911, while checking Jake's pulse. Her instincts kicked in because she'd seen this before. Her mom had diabetes, and low blood sugar could knock someone out faster than you can say cheeseburger combo. As customers whipped out their phones to dial emergency services, Tasha grabbed a juice box from the kids' meal section and shoved it under Jake's nose once he regained consciousness. But here's where things took a turn for the worse. Enter Greg, the store owner, a grumpy middle-aged man with a perpetual scowl and an obsession with cutting corners. Instead of thanking Tasha for potentially saving a customer's life, he marched over with steam practically shooting out of his ears. "What do you think you're doing giving away free food to some dirty homeless man?" Greg barked, pointing accusingly at Jake, who was still slumped against the wall looking dazed. "He's not homeless," Tasha shot back, her voice firm despite the tension in the air. "He passed out cold. I recognize the signs. You want me to just stand there and let him die?" Greg wasn't having it. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," he snapped. "And now you've cost us money. Consider yourself fired." The room fell silent. Customers exchanged awkward glances as Tasha stood frozen, clutching the empty juice box like it might somehow save her job. Just moments ago, she'd been a hero. Now she was unemployed, all because she tried to help someone in need. So what happens next? Does Tasha find another job? Does Jake recover and realize what went down? Stick around to find out. It's about to get wild. If you're wondering how things turn out for Tasha, hit that like button and stick around. This story gets wild. Well, being fired wasn't just a slap in the face. It was a punch to the gut. For Tasha, every rejection email that followed felt like another kick while she was already down. She spent her first day post-job scrolling through online job boards, applying to anything and everything: cashier positions, office admin roles, even dog-walking gigs. But no matter how qualified she seemed on paper, nothing stuck. Hoffa. The real kicker came when recruiters started calling Greg for references. Instead of telling the truth about what happened, that Tasha had gone above and beyond to help a customer, Greg spun a web of lies so thick it could have choked a spider. "She stole from us," he told one hiring manager, coldly. "We caught her giving away food without paying, and frankly, I wouldn't trust her around money or inventory." Tasha found out about these calls during an interview with a local retail chain. The HR rep looked at her over his glasses, frowning. "Miss Johnson, your former employer mentioned some concerns about theft. Can you explain that?" The room tilted slightly as Tasha's heart sank. "That's not true," she said, her voice steady, despite the storm brewing inside her. "I helped a man who collapsed in the store. He wasn't faking it. He needed medical attention, and I acted quickly. My boss didn't like that I gave him a juice box." But no matter how many times she explained herself, no one believed her. It was like watching doors slam shut before she even got close enough to knock. Financial stress hit hard and fast. Rent was due in 2 weeks, and her savings account was skinnier than Greg's excuse for firing her. Every night, after tucking her daughter into bed, Tasha sat at the kitchen table surrounded by bills, resumes, and half-empty coffee mugs. Sometimes, she'd catch herself staring blankly at the wall, wondering if she'd ever catch a break. Her mind would drift to worst-case scenarios: eviction notices, living out of her car, explaining to her little girl why they couldn't afford dinner. Yet somehow, Tasha kept going. She reminded herself daily that quitting wasn't an option, not when her daughter depended on her. So she practiced interview questions late at night, recording herself on her phone to hear how she sounded. Tell me about a time you handled a difficult situation. Answer: when my boss fired me for saving someone's life. She rehearsed answers until her delivery was smooth, even though deep down, she knew it probably wouldn't make a difference. There were moments of absurdity too, the kind of quirky resilience that made life bearable. Like the time she tried practicing power poses in front of the mirror, but ended up laughing so hard she cried. Or when her daughter marched into the living room, wearing a makeshift CEO name tag made from construction paper, and declared, "Mommy, now you're the boss." Tasha hugged her tightly, thinking, if only it were that easy. One particularly rough afternoon, Tasha received yet another rejection email. This one stung more than most, because it came from a company she'd been excited about. A marketing firm looking for someone with experience managing campaigns. Marketing, that used to be her world. Before everything fell apart, she'd run her own business, leading teams and strategizing ad campaigns like a pro. Now she couldn't even land an entry-level gig at a place she once would have aced. As she stared at the screen, tears welling up in her eyes, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her best friend, Keisha. "Girl, don't let Greg win. You're better than this. Keep pushing." Keisha's words echoed in Tasha's head long after she set the phone down. Maybe she was better than this. Maybe Greg's lies and the endless rejections weren't the end of her story. Still, hope felt fragile, like holding a glass ornament in trembling hands, terrified it might shatter at any moment. And then, just when things seemed darkest, something unexpected happened. Something that would change everything. Let me know in the comments if you've ever dealt with unfair bosses. I'd love to hear your stories. Have you ever felt like the universe was working against you? Share your thoughts below. A few days later, Jake walked back into Greg's burger barn, but this time, he wasn't wearing sweat-soaked gym clothes. Nope. Today's Jake was clean-cut, polished, and downright unrecognizable. Dressed in a crisp button-up shirt, tailored slacks, and shiny loafers, he looked more like a Wall Street exec than the guy who'd face-planted by the soda machine just days before. His hair was neatly combed, his breath minty fresh, and his demeanor oozed confidence. He strode up to the counter with purpose, flashing a polite smile at the cashier, a new employee who clearly hadn't been there during the infamous juice box incident. "Hi," Jake began, leaning slightly forward as if sharing a secret. "I'm looking for someone who works here, or used to work here. Her name is Tasha. Do you know her?" The cashier blinked, confused. "Tasha? Oh yeah, she got fired last week." Jake froze mid-smile, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. "Fired? For what?" Before the cashier could answer, Greg appeared from the back office, drawn by the sound of Jake's voice. When he saw Jake standing there, all suave and put together, his eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Hey, aren't you that homeless guy who passed out in my store?" he barked, pointing an accusatory finger. Jake raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Homeless? No, I'm not homeless. I was out jogging when my blood sugar dropped, and I fainted. Thankfully, one of your employees, Tasha, saved me." Greg scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest. "Yeah, right. You're probably just trying to scam us again. Get out of here before I call security." "Scam you?" Jake repeated, incredulous. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, waving it dramatically. "Look, I came back to pay for the food I ate that day, and to thank the woman who saved my life. But apparently, she doesn't work here anymore, because you fired her. Care to explain why?" Greg didn't care to explain. Instead, he launched into a tirade, loudly accusing Jake of lying and causing trouble. Customers turned their heads, phones already out to record the drama. By the time Greg finished yelling, Jake had calmly slipped away, leaving behind a crumpled $20 bill on the counter to cover his meal. Later that evening, Jake sat at his dining room table, surrounded by papers, sticky notes, and half-empty coffee cups. Determined to track down Tasha, he dove headfirst into some amateur sleuthing. First stop, Google. Typing Tasha Johnson, fast food worker fired into the search bar, felt ridiculous, but hey, it worked for detectives in movies, right? Unfortunately, Google wasn't much help. After scrolling through pages of unrelated results, including a baffling number of recipes for Tasha's famous banana bread. Jake decided to take things offline. Picking up his phone, he dialed the number listed on Greg's Burger Barn's website. "Hello, this is Jake," he said when the receptionist answered. "I'm calling to ask about a former employee named Tasha. She helped me recently, and I wanted to reach out to thank her." There was a long pause on the other end. "Oh, we can't give out personal information," the receptionist replied hesitantly. Jake sighed. "Okay, fair enough. Can you at least tell me if she left a forwarding address or anything?" "Nope, sorry." Jake hung up, frustrated but undeterred. Next, he tried social media. Searching Instagram yielded hundreds of profiles belonging to women named Tasha, none of whom seemed remotely connected to Greg's Burger Barn. Then came Facebook, where he stumbled across a promising lead. A profile picture of a smiling woman holding a little girl. Bingo. But before he could message her, Jake realized he needed proof that this was the Tasha. So naturally, he called the local library. "Yes, really. Hi. Does anyone there remember seeing a woman named Tasha using the computers recently?" he asked the librarian, trying not to laugh at how absurd this whole thing was becoming. The librarian chuckled. "Well, sir, we see a lot of people here, but I do recall a young lady with a sweet little girl coming in almost every evening. They always sit at the same table near the windows." Jackpot. Armed with this intel, Jake drove to the library the next afternoon, arriving just as Tasha and her daughter were packing up their things. From a distance, he watched them leave, noting the apartment complex they entered. Finally, after hours of awkward phone calls, fruitless internet searches, and borderline stalkerish behavior, he had her address. That night, sitting alone in his apartment, Jake couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and amusement at his own persistence. Sure, his methods weren't exactly James Bond-level espionage, but they got the job done, and now, armed with Tasha's address and a plan brewing in his mind, he knew exactly what he needed to do next. If you think Jake's plan is genius so far, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss how it all unfolds. Trust me, this story only gets better from here. When Jake showed up at Tasha's door the next evening, she wasn't expecting company, especially not someone dressed like they just stepped out of a business meeting. Still, there he was, standing awkwardly on her doorstep with a bouquet of grocery store flowers in one hand and an apologetic smile on his face. "Hi," Jake said softly. "I'm Jake. You saved my life the other day, and I wanted to thank you properly." Tasha blinked, momentarily stunned. What if she recognized him instantly? The man from the restaurant, but seeing him now, clean-cut and composed, made it hard to reconcile with the image of him sprawled unconscious by the soda machine. After a beat, she opened the door wider. "Come in," she said, gesturing toward the modest living room. As they sat down, Jake noticed photos scattered across the walls. Family portraits, candid shots of laughter-filled moments, and framed certificates that hinted at a life far different from working at Greg's Burger Barn. Curiosity got the better of him. "So, can I ask what brought you to that job? Not that there's anything wrong with it. I mean, fast food is great, but something tells me it's not where you started." Tasha hesitated, then sighed. "It's a long story. I've got time," Jake replied earnestly. And so, for the first time in years, Tasha told her story, not just snippets or excuses, but the whole messy truth. Once upon a time, Tasha had been unstoppable. Alongside her husband Marcus, she co-founded a thriving marketing agency that specialized in helping small businesses grow. They were the dream team. Marcus handled operations and strategy, while Tasha dazzled clients with creative campaigns. Their daughter, Mia, grew up surrounded by success, literally. One of Tasha's favorite memories was finding 3-year-old Mia sitting in Marcus's office chair, wearing oversized sunglasses and barking orders into a toy phone. "Mia says we need more snacks," she'd declare, striking fear into no one but making everyone laugh. But life has a cruel way of pulling the rug out from under your feet when you least expect it. When Mia was 4, Marcus was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Overnight, their world shifted. The vibrant man who used to dance around the kitchen while cooking dinner became a shadow of himself, tethered to hospital beds and IV drips. Tasha poured every ounce of energy into caring for him, even as her own mental health began to crumble. When Marcus passed away 2 years later, Tasha didn't just lose her partner, she lost herself. Depression swallowed her whole, leaving her unable to focus, let alone run a company. Bills piled up, savings dwindled, and within 3 months, the business they'd built together collapsed. It was like watching a house burn down, slowly at first, then all at once. For a long time, Tasha couldn't imagine getting back on her feet. Like every morning felt like trudging through quicksand. But eventually, Mia gave her a reason to try again. "Mommy, are we poor now?" Mia had asked one day, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. Tasha forced a smile and shook her head. "No, baby. We're just figuring things out." Figuring things out meant starting over, from scratch. With no savings and a resume that hadn't been updated in years, Tasha took whatever jobs she could find. Fast food restaurants, retail stores, temp agencies. It didn't matter as long as it paid the bills. Working at Greg's Burger Barn wasn't glamorous, but it kept a roof over their heads and food on the table. And honestly, Tasha didn't mind too much. At least flipping burgers gave her time to think about the future without drowning in grief. Of course, there were still glimmers of humor in the darkness. Like the time Mia decided to host a business meeting using plastic teacups and mismatched plates. "Okay, Mommy," she announced solemnly. "We need to brainstorm ideas for our new ad campaign." Or the night Tasha accidentally burned dinner and ended up ordering pizza, only for Mia to critique the delivery guy's customer service skills. He didn't smile enough. Despite everything, Tasha clung to hope, because she had to. For Mia. For herself. Because deep down, she knew Marcus wouldn't want her to give up. He'd come here to repay her kindness, but hearing her story made him realize how much strength it must have taken just to keep going. Does any part of Tasha's story resonate with you? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. Whether it's bouncing back after loss, dealing with unfair bosses, or raising kids while juggling chaos, I'd love to hear your thoughts. After Tasha finished sharing her story, Jake sat quietly for a moment, processing everything she'd said. Finally, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black business card. Sliding it across the table toward her, he said, "Tasha, I owe you more than just a thank you. You saved my life when no one else stepped up, not even me. And after hearing your story, I think I might have a way to help." Tasha picked up the card hesitantly, turning it over in her hands. The embossed gold lettering read, "Jake Reynolds, Director of Marketing, Crestwood Enterprises." She frowned slightly, tilting her head, as if waiting for the punchline. Crestwood Enterprises, as in, the biggest marketing firm in the state, one and only, Jake replied with a grin. "Look, I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. Be at this address tomorrow morning, at 9 a.m., Unjo, and I'll explain everything." Tasha stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Was this some sort of prank? A random act of kindness gone too far? Or was Jake genuinely offering her a lifeline? Either way, she couldn't afford to ignore it. The next morning, Tasha woke up before dawn, nerves buzzing like static electricity. She hadn't slept much, her mind racing with questions about what Jake had planned. After showering and dressing in the nicest outfit she owned, a navy blazer paired with slacks that were slightly too tight, she poured herself a cup of coffee to calm her jittery stomach. Unfortunately, coffee and anxiety don't mix well. Figuring things out meant starting over, from scratch. With no savings and a resume that hadn't been updated in years, Tasha took whatever jobs she could find: fast food restaurants, retail stores, temp agencies. It didn't matter as long as it paid the bills. Working at Greg's Burger Barn wasn't glamorous, but it kept a roof over their heads and food on the table. And honestly, Tasha didn't mind too much. At least flipping burgers gave her time to think about the future without drowning in grief. Of course, there were still glimmers of humor in the darkness. Like the time Mia decided to host a business meeting using plastic teacups and mismatched plates. "Okay, Mommy," she announced solemnly. "We need to brainstorm ideas for our new ad campaign." Or the night Tasha accidentally burned dinner and ended up ordering pizza, only for Mia to critique the delivery guy's customer service skills. He didn't smile enough. Despite everything, Tasha clung to hope because she had to. For Mia, for herself. Because deep down she knew Marcus wouldn't want her to give up. By the time Tasha finished talking, Jake was speechless. He'd come here to repay her kindness, but hearing her story made him realize how much strength it must have taken just to keep going. Does any part of Tasha's story resonate with you? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. Whether it's bouncing back after loss, dealing with unfair bosses, or raising kids while juggling chaos, I'd love to hear your thoughts. After Tasha finished sharing her story, Jake sat quietly for a moment, processing everything she'd said. Finally, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black business card. Sliding it across the table toward her, he said, "Tasha, I owe you more than just a thank you. You saved my life when no one else stepped up, not even me. And after hearing your story, I think I might have a way to help." Tasha picked up the card hesitantly, turning it over in her hands. The embossed gold lettering read, "Jake Reynolds, Director of Marketing, Crestwood Enterprises." She frowned slightly, tilting her head as if waiting for the punchline. "Crestwood Enterprises? As in, the biggest marketing firm in the state?" "One and only," Jake replied with a grin. "Look, I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. Be at this address tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Tia, and I'll explain everything." Tasha stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Was this some sort of prank? A random act of kindness gone too far? Or was Jake genuinely offering her a lifeline? Either way, she couldn't afford to ignore it. The next morning, Tasha woke up before dawn, nerves buzzing like static electricity. She hadn't slept much, her mind racing with questions about what Jake had planned. After showering and dressing in the nicest outfit she owned, a navy blazer paired with slacks that were slightly too tight, she poured herself a cup of coffee to calm her jittery stomach. Unfortunately, coffee and anxiety don't mix well. As she rushed out the door, juggling her purse, keys, and travel mug, disaster struck. In her haste, she tripped over Mia's toy fire truck, sending hot coffee splashing all over her blazer. "Are you kidding me?" she groaned, staring down at the dark stains spreading across her chest. With no time to change, she grabbed a dish towel, dabbed at the mess, and prayed no one would notice. By the time she arrived at the address on Jake's card, a towering glass skyscraper downtown, her nerves were through the roof. The lobby alone screamed corporate power. Marble floors, leather couches, and a receptionist desk manned by someone who looked like they belonged in a fashion magazine. Tasha approached cautiously, clutching her now damp blazer closed. "I'm here to see Jake Reynolds," she stammered, trying to sound confident despite feeling wildly underdressed. The receptionist nodded coolly. "Your name?" "Tasha Johnson." A few moments later, Jake appeared, looking every bit as polished as he had the night before. He greeted her warmly, though his eyes flickered briefly to the coffee stain on her blazer. For a split second, Tasha thought he might comment, but instead, he simply smiled and gestured toward the elevators, ready to see where the magic happens. They rode up to the top floor in silence, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. When the elevator doors slid open, Tasha stepped into an expansive office space, filled with bustling employees, typing furiously on laptops and chatting animatedly in huddle rooms. Posters of award-winning ad campaigns lined the walls, each one marked with the Crestwood logo. It was overwhelming and exhilarating. Finally, they reached Jake's corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, while shelves lined with trophies and framed awards hinted at his success. Jake motioned for her to sit, then leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "Tasha," he began, "when I started digging into your background, I found something interesting. Turns out, you're not just a former fast food worker, you're a powerhouse. MBA, master's degree in marketing, years of experience running your own agency. Why are you working at Greg's Burger Barn?" Tasha felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Desperation," she admitted softly. "After my husband passed away, I lost everything. I didn't have time to rebuild. I needed to survive." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Well, consider this your chance to rebuild. I want to offer you the position of copyright manager at Crestwood Enterprises. It's a senior role, and I believe you're perfect for it." Tasha's jaw dropped. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" "Dead serious," Jake replied, his tone unwavering. "You've got the skills, the experience, and the resilience we need. Plus, it's the least I can do after what you did for me." For a moment, Tasha forgot how to breathe. Her heart pounded so loudly she swore Jake could hear it. This wasn't just a job, it was redemption, a second chance, a way to reclaim the life she'd lost. But then reality hit her like a freight train. I can't accept charity, she said firmly, shaking her head. Not because I don't appreciate it, but because I need to earn this. Jake raised an eyebrow, impressed.
Good answer. That's exactly why I want you here.
Trust me, Tasha. This isn't charity. It's an investment in you, in your talent, and in the future of this company. Tasha opened her mouth to respond, but stopped short when she caught sight of herself in the reflection of Jake's window. The coffee stain was still glaringly obvious, and suddenly she couldn't hold back a laugh.
Oh lol,
She said, chuckling. If nothing else, I guess I'll make a memorable first impression.
Jake joined in, laughing heartily.
Don't worry about the stain. Around here we value creativity over perfection anyway. As Tasha left the building later that day, clutching her new employee badge and a folder full of paperwork, she felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to dream again, to imagine a future where she wasn't just surviving but thriving. This kind of plot twist doesn't happen every day. If you're loving this story, share it with a friend who needs a good laugh and cry. Tasha's first day at Crestwood Enterprises was nothing short of surreal. Walking into the office felt like stepping into a dream she'd long since buried. The team greeted her warmly, eager to learn from someone with her expertise, and Jake made sure she had everything she needed to hit the ground running.
Oh.
By lunchtime, Tasha found herself brainstorming ideas for a major campaign, a task that reignited the spark she thought she'd lost forever. That evening, when she walked through the door of their tiny apartment, Mia was waiting with a welcome home boss lady sign taped crookedly to the wall. Her daughter stood proudly in her pajamas, holding a tray loaded with mismatched plates of macaroni and cheese, sliced bananas, and what appeared to be half a cookie. Mommy's officially fancy now, Mia declared, setting the tray down on the coffee table.
So we're having a party.
Tasha laughed, pulling her daughter into a tight hug. This is the best party I've ever been to, she said, kissing the top of Mia's head. As they sat together eating cold noodles and laughing over silly jokes, Tasha realized something profound. This wasn't just a fresh start for her, it was a new beginning for both of them.
Oi.
No more late-night tears or panic about unpaid bills. For the first time in years, they could breathe easy. But the first time in years, they could breathe easy.
Oi.
Meanwhile, back at Greg's Burger Barn, Karma was quietly circling. Word had spread online about Tasha's firing, thanks to Jake leaving a scathing review and encouraging others to do the same. Customers flooded social media, calling out Greg's cruelty and praising Tasha's kindness. One viral post featured a photo of Jake holding a juice box with the caption, "This man owes his life to an employee. Greg fired for helping him. Support small businesses instead." Within days, Greg's restaurant saw a sharp decline in foot traffic. His once busy counter now sat eerily quiet, save for Greg muttering under his breath about fake news while scrubbing ketchup stains off the floor. As weeks turned into months, Tasha settled into her role at Crestwood, thriving in ways she never imagined possible. She poured her heart into every project, channeling her creativity and resilience into campaigns that earned rave reviews. And whenever things got tough, she reminded herself of how far she'd come, not just professionally, but personally. Looking back, Tasha marveled at the chain of events that led her here. A stranger collapsing in a fast food joint, a stubborn boss too blind to see past his own greed, a little girl playing pretend CEO in her living room. Each moment, big or small, had shaped her journey, proving that even in the darkest times, there's always hope for redemption. The story of Tasha and Jake became a testament to the power of kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right. It reminded everyone who heard it, including Tasha herself, that sometimes life throws you curveballs, not to knock you down, but to steer you towards something better. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Trust me, we've got plenty more twists, laughs, and heartfelt moments coming your way. Tasha went from saving a stranger's life to losing her job, battling unfair bosses, and fighting to rebuild her world, only to rise stronger than ever with the help of Jake, who turned out to be a top marketing director. Together, they proved that kindness has its rewards, second chances are worth fighting for, and even the grumpiest Gregs can get what's coming to them. If this story made you smile, cry, or cheer, show some love. Hit like, share it with friends, and subscribe so you never miss another wild ride like this one. Thanks for sticking around until the end. You're the reason we keep telling these tales. Drop a comment below and let me know, what's your favorite part of Tasha's journey? See you next time.